Hey guys, Whyt Manga here, the creator of Apple Black, publishes serialized in Saturday AM. And thanks to our Saturday AM and Quarto book deal, my manga volume is going to be released this summer, along with all the other stellar manga volumes within our book line. I highly recommend you guys go check them out. But within the business and learning a lot of things with this process of getting your books published, especially in this way where it'll be worldwide, translated, the list goes on. A lot of the business people, buyers, the people who are going to be putting the books in bookstores for all sorts of books, comic books, novels, the list goes on. They want to know what they're investing in, and so they want to know how long the series is going to run. A decent estimate. But in order to do that, you kind of need to have a decent idea of where you're headed with the series, right? To give that estimate. Which ties into a question that I've been getting since the beginning of time. Should I know my series from start to finish? Hey, yo, Pat, you know your whole story?
Oh, hello. Didn't see you there. Yeah.
No need to be weird. Just answer the question. No need to be weird. Just asking for a simple answer.
I know everything.
No.
I know from the beginning to the end. No problem. It's all here.
I know it. It's all right here.
Maybe if y'all buy this man's book, he'll calm down.
I've written it all down.
Why you do that?
Because I don't want to forget. Of course. Yeah, I got everything. It's all in here. It's all in here. I know the beginning all the way to the end. I know the end.
You said that. What's that sound?
Just there's some weird bug in my room.
If you enjoyed this video so far, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. All the engagement stuff helps a great deal. Thanks. Should you know your whole story from start to finish? What do you make? Manga, webtoon, comics, film, animation, novel, graphic novel, light novel, novel. Doesn't really matter. The first thing you should do is be brutally honest with yourself. Why are you making this? What are your goals making this? Is this a hobby? Do you answer to someone? Is there an audience you need to cater to? Is it a combination of catering to your audience and you? Are you kind of part of your audience? What do you want to do? How long do you actually want to be creating this? What's the length of it? Is it going to be a one-off or is it going to be a bajillion chapters like One Piece? Why are you even asking yourself this if you know you're not going to be able to complete it? Or you want to do 100 chapters but it takes you 4 months to do one chapter? Be real with yourself and answer all these questions thoroughly. And then, for the purposes of this video and being able to answer that question, should you know your story from start to finish, you need to know what a story actually is. A story can also be many stories within a story. So what do we mean when we say story before we go all Russian doll with it? A story is something with structure. Some form of a beginning, middle, and end. And usually the end is satisfactory in some ways. Some more than others, but again, it depends on your goals and it depends on the answers to those initial questions that you need to answer at the beginning. You can find more proper definitions of what a story is, but for the purposes of this video, let's just call it structure. The 3 acts apply everywhere. All kinds of stories, whether they're long-term stories or you're looking at the long-term, or short-term stories or just looking at the short-term. That structure of a beginning, middle, and end is usually a 3-act structure, even though there are various structures out there, but the 3-act structure is the most common. Your introduction, your body, conclusion, your beginning, middle, and end. This can apply to a scene, it can apply to a fight scene, it can apply to an episode, a chapter, a mid-season finale, a season, the whole series, a film, animation, even music videos, songs that have 3 verses. That structure can be applied to a whole arc or the whole series. And so for homework, you can go watch whatever you want to watch and try to figure out where the middle, beginning, and end is for everything. So now that we can identify what a story is, should you know your story from start to finish? Depends on you. There are those who do, there are those who don't, depending on the answers to all those questions we asked at the start of the video. My advice is to know the story from start to finish to a point, to a degree. You don't want to know every single detail, every word of dialogue. Oh, a blade of grass moved in this chapter, you need to know that. You just need to know the important things. The key things that need to happen to progress the story, develop the characters, develop the story, push the story forward, the things that make it interesting, the key points. If you look at some of the 3-act structure through these images, you can see these points where, yes, everything is kind of split into 3 acts, but then you have all these moments in between. And if you're able to identify those from start to finish, that's a good place to be. But you don't even always need to know all of them. My advice is to know it to a point with room for flexibility, room for change, room to evolve, in case you come up with better ideas or some reason for you to change certain things or certain aspects of the story. I think this is especially applicable, in my opinion, to the long-term type of storytelling. For short-term, you can still apply the same thing, but you might want to know more because, again, you're going to spend less time making it because it's short term. It's easier for me to make a 5-page story versus a 5,000-page story. It makes more sense to know more of what happens in a 5-page story. In fact, pretty much almost everything in a 5-page story versus a 5,000-page story. And even when you go into the long-term storytelling, if you're going scene by scene or episode by episode, chapter by chapter, before you even make that chapter, you want to know most of what happens in that chapter before you start putting that together and writing it out. You create the script and then form a storyboard from the script, and then from that storyboard and script you form the pages, and you go on and on and on. That's more of a comic sense manga approach to making, say, comics, webtoons, whatever the case may be. But it'll be the same thing for film, except instead of script to storyboard to pages, you're going script storyboard to, actual filmmaking stuff. You guys get it. But while you're actually making it, you are defining everything to a T. Nothing is set in stone until you've actually written it out, put it down. And sometimes even then, you can still change it maybe before publication or release. The story doesn't have to be defined completely until you're actually making it. Even in film, sometimes there are moments where, yes, there's a script, but then the actor might improvise a scene or something like that, and then that gets kept versus what was actually in the script. Shorter stories, you tend to know more versus the longer stories, because with the longer stories, you want to have room to evolve and be flexible. You still have that with the shorter stories, but less so. And you're doing this all while keeping in line with whatever principles and morals that you have set into this series to make sure it is what it is and it's consistently what it is throughout. Unless, you want to change it. But best practices is to be consistent. With those key points, as you can see on this 3-act structure, again, there are many other act structures. The 3-act one is just the most popular one, and if this is the one you're going to be working with, again, you want to be consistent. But if you look at these key points and outlines, you have your inciting incident, plot twist, this and that. Where you place those things can be up to you. Don't be afraid to do things that are new. You don't have to follow this structure to a T. This is just maybe an example of a standard. But you can have multiple plot twists. You can have some of these things. There are movies where the plot twist happens at the beginning of the movie or in the middle, and most times it happens at the end, but feel free to move things around as long as it still has that vibe of beginning, middle, and end. And then you have others who kind of wing it, which is also sometimes applicable depending on the answers you gave to the big questions in the beginning. There are series that are episodic where they still know what happens, they still know the whole story, but maybe they know the whole story from episode to episode, so it's very episodic. They don't know every episode that's ever going to happen. Example, say a Family Guy, they're kind of going season by season, and maybe they'll know everything that happens in the season, right? But sometimes maybe they'll plan ahead and they'll know, okay, next season we know this episode is going to be in there because it's tied to the episode that we're working on right now, and blah, 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 blah. But ultimately, there's a sense of it being episodic and winging it as time goes on, or at least season to season. They don't even know how many seasons they're going to have sometimes. So you can't know everything that's going to happen in a story completely. In some cases, it's almost literally impossible to. And sometimes, even if you did, it doesn't mean you get to make it. There are many series that run in Shonen Jump that maybe planned for hundreds of chapters, or maybe didn't know how long they were going to run, but they know at the back of their head that it's potentially possible that they'll maybe get to the 1 bajillion chapters like a One Piece. But sometimes Shonen Jump can come in for reasons. Maybe the series is not doing too great, or whatever the case may be, and it gets canceled, and they're like, hey, Holmes, fam, you got 3 weeks to end your show. You got 3 weeks to finish Series X. That happens. And that's all tied to the questions at the beginning. How long do you have to make this? Who do you answer to? All that kind of stuff. Some of it is not in your hands to decide whether you know the whole story or not. And sometimes it is. Sometimes things change because of a deadline. You get it canceled. If it's film and an actor gets injured, you have to move certain aspects of the script around, or certain scenes get moved around, certain characters that were supposed to do just A and B, but now somebody's injured, so okay, maybe they have to do A, B, and C, or now you have to introduce a completely new character because this. Sometimes it's a budget issue, and sometimes it's just out of your hands. There are some times where you know you have a story, and you don't want to think too far ahead, right? Depending on how many of these key points, outlines that you can see in this structure and how it applies to the whole story long term, the further out in the story, closer to whenever the end is, the less you know. But sometimes it's best to know a lot, to know enough, because that way it can actually inform the decisions that you're making in the now within your story. It allows you to be able to foreshadow certain things, leave Easter eggs for certain things, be symbolic in certain ways that maybe are a nod to what's going to happen in the future. You just want to make sure you're doing it in such a way you leave room for flexibility if you want to change your mind or evolve the idea into something else. There are characters in my series that I didn't plan on killing off until one day I was in the shower and boom! I got an idea. They're going to die now. As sad as it is, I'm going to kill them off. That happens because you come up with a better idea and then you're like, oh, okay, this, that, let's move this around, let's do that. It's a killer. Like visually, sometimes I can picture it in my head, and that might have not been the initial plan, but now it is. And because I have that idea of what happens in the future and how it's going to happen, now I can set it up so it doesn't feel like it came out of nowhere too much. And even if it feels like it came out of nowhere, maybe I can structure it in such a way where even when it does come out of nowhere, it still feels justified and satisfying and interesting. It allows you plan for the future better if you know what's to come. Film has this structure, beginning, middle, and end, whether it's an animated film or just a regular live action film. Novels have this. Sometimes novels will have this chapter to chapter, but then they'll have it for the overarching book, for the whole book. You can kind of break down their chapters into structures, and you can also break down the whole book into a structure as a whole. TV shows that are kind of episodic but kind of long-term, like a Smallville or a Flash. Every episode kind of has a villain to the degree, right? 9 times out of 10. And so that episode can be broken down into a structure, and then the whole season can be broken down into a structure. Maybe sometimes the first half of the season or the first third of the season can be broken down to a structure in some kind of way where it has that introduction and body and conclusion. Even essays have this. Fully episodic shows like a Boondocks, Family Guy, they have this as well. Less so for the whole season, but then they have it on an episode level. Sitcoms are similar. Even anime today, some episodes will have that structure. In fact, 9 times out of 10, the episode will have that structure, but the structure can be more easily identified for a whole season. Mainstream manga, non-mainstream manga, weekly manga, monthly manga, the individual chapters, you can identify structure there, or you can identify structure in a whole arc. You can identify structure in a whole series, even one-shots and pilot TV episodes. And again, this comes from you answering those questions in the beginning. Are you making a one-shot? Or are you making a weekly thing? Are you making a scroll format series? Are you making pages? Are these going to be published in print? It's good to have those questions answered, and it'll kind of allow you know what to do. With Apple Black, I kind of know the story from start to finish, but the further out, the less I know. Like, I have an idea of what the end of the series is, but I have 5 alternate endings, and I don't 100% know what the best one is yet. But I know we're headed in that direction, and I know all the key points and outlines and the elements that you find in the structures. Like, I know where they're placed moving forward. I know more of them based off of where we are currently in the series, because we're currently in the series. I'm actually making chapters, so I have to know these things. And because I know what happens in the future, it puts me in a position where I can foreshadow things. I can be smart with certain things, but at the same time, you're not just thinking for the future. You want to make sure that your now is interesting. You're keeping people engaged in the now, and you're not only excited about what's to come. I don't plan for my series to be a one-piece type thing. No, right? Because I know how long it takes me to do a chapter. I know how long I want to spend making this comic. I don't want to spend my whole life making this comic. I imagine Apple Black running for 30-something volumes. But really, this first part of the series would be like for, 20 volumes, maybe even 18. And then a time skip, which is kind of like a time skip / sequel. And then that will run for like about 10 volumes. And that's it. Anything outside of that, maybe prequels or other quels, I might run it, write it, or something like that, but I might not draw it. So this is going to be closer to more of a Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood length, maybe even less, versus the length of a Bleach or a Naruto or a One Piece. And that's it, guys. So, you asked me, hey, do I know my whole story from start to finish? The answer is, kind of, sort of. I kind of know the whole story to a degree. I know the whole story in some key points, with room to be flexible, with room to grow and be evolving and, change my ideas here and there. But the direction is the same. I know where we're heading. I know the principles of the story, and I'm being consistent with that. And that's what I'm doing with Apple Black. let's hear from some other creators. Jay, you know your whole story?
Oh, yeah. I had the entire ending planned out. There are a few other things that I've changed throughout the entire story, but the ending has been planned out for a while, and I'm just trying to keep my mind open. I guess I might change some things here or there, but
Are you rambling, Jay?
this is a ramble. The ending is planned out. I am very excited to tell it. So
Yeah, I know my story from start to finish. It looks like I don't, but I do. I've written out the entire thing, and I've also drawn most of it. So, but like illustration is not the whole. Like I haven't drawn the whole thing, but I mean I could, but I haven't done that yet. I've drawn like images that lead to it, so I know what's gonna happen. And I just finished writing the whole thing, so like, it's exciting.
For our 2.5 people that made it to the end of this video, I thank you. Holy Ghost, smash that subscribe button, like this video, leave a comment if you have any questions. Don't forget to hit that bell so you stay notified each time I upload absolutely anything. Turn on all notifications. Check out Jay's book Hammer, Pop's book Oblivion Rouge, and all the other series in the book line. Check out more videos in this series, starting with a how to make manga explained. They're kind of little documentaries / tutorials tracking the whole process of getting our books published worldwide. Or you can just check out all the other fun videos on the channel. It's Whyt Manga, and I'm Audi 9000.